Hello friends, I am the HBK. Welcome to Internationalleaks. Today we will discuss the war between Russia and Ukraine and the possibility of war between United States and Russia. Will Russia invade Ukraine or Russia and United States will go on war over Ukraine? In this video you will find out a better understanding and it may change your perception on war among these countries. Don't skip the video, watch till the end. Let's begin. The emergence of two different stories in Western media and Russian state media is telling their country's stories and regarding Ukraine invasion and sometimes blaming and aiming one another. The West see the talks as road to de-escalation of situation around Ukraine while rejecting and ignoring Russia's demands for security guarantees on NATO expansion and limits to deployment of offensive missiles in its neighborhood and reducing US and NATO military infrastructure in Eastern Europe to 1997 levels. Russia on the other hand sees the talks primarily as negotiation on these security guarantees while the situation around Ukraine is secondary. Russia wants written guarantees in treaty form. NATO membership for Ukraine or Georgia is not anvil in any foreseeable future. Neither the US nor Europe has stomach to go on war with Russia or Ukraine or Georgia. Russia has existential security concerns in these areas as well and political will to defend these interests. Whereas US and its allies have neither any overwhelming security interests nor the political will to go on war with Russia over these territories. Russia also knows that it is impossible for US or its allies to sign agreements dismissing Ukraine's or Georgia's NATO memberships or to allow Russia a veto on future memberships. Russia also understands that it would be impossible to get such an agreement ratified by the current US government. As for missiles deployments, the US has declared that it is willing to discuss these issues with Russia. In any case, the sticking point is likely not to be the question of US missiles in Ukraine or Georgia, as this does not appear to be a critical goal for US. What could put a wrinkle into the negotiation is deployment of US missiles in Romania and Poland. A few thousand US or NATO personnel posted in some Eastern European areas, including Baltic states. But while there is still scope for an agreement between Russia and the West, it must be understood that Russia would be looking for agreements primarily with the United States and not NATO or the European Union, who in Russia's view are secondary actors subservient to US. Second, that Russia's demands are strategic and long-term and should not be dismissed out of hand. Russia has a plan B on how to escalate the crisis using what Kremlin calls military technical means. These are probably deployments of missiles and other platforms across the globe that would increase insecurities in the West, including the United States. Such escalations would run the risk of out of hand. The gap in perceptions is so broad that a new and dangerous escalation could be necessary to make the parties open up their imagination and search for agreements. Fyodor Lukyanov, the head of the Moscow-based Council for Foreign and Defense Policy, said, "Here it would be useful to remember that any war between the US and Russia is unwinnable by either side. But before the world faces nuclear annihilation, it may face an unprecedented economic crisis brought on by the danger of war. The imminence of war would not leave markets unaffected, they would crash." This is something that Russian Deputy Minister Ryabkov mentioned recently in response to a question. Meanwhile, Yevgeny Budzynski, a retired lieutenant general and regular Russian TV commentator, told the New York Times that Russia would win any war with Ukraine in short order through devastating airstrikes. There will be no columns of tanks. General Budzynski said in the interview, "They will just destroy all the Ukrainian infrastructure from the air, just like you do it." Additionally, analyst Gilbert Doctorow notes in his blog that Russia's capacity to decimate the Ukrainian military infrastructure without deploying a single soldier on Ukrainian soil would render wasted the Western billions poured into modernizing and arming the Ukrainian armed forces, as well as end any NATO plans to deploy forces in Ukraine. All in all, it is a better prospect to have an understanding between the West and Russia on the nature of the security changes required in Europe, rather than have to follow these agreements without an agreement. So far from beating the drums of war, it appears the omens are suggesting that the role of serious diplomacy is only beginning, but the road ahead is long and tortuous. For more leaks, subscribe our channel International Leaks. Thanks for watching.